$1 million. Free to play. You just need to survive. It's the Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Pick one team to win each week. Get it right, move on. Get it wrong, you're out. The last fans standing take home a guaranteed $1 million cash prize. And for every player who joins, we add $1 to the pot, up to $10 million. The Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Play free on the Fanatics app. App access open to all. Must be 21 plus and joined by 9/8 to play. No purchase necessary. U.S. only. Void where prohibited. Subject to complete terms. See fanatics.com/game rules.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
You are now entering the Stone Zone, where there have been reports that Chelsea Clinton, daughter of Hillary Rotten Clinton, is warming up to run for the House seat of Congressman Jerry Nadler, the Marxist congressman from Manhattan. But if that happens, there'll be a lot of public scrutiny that I'm not sure that Chelsea Clinton really wants. You see, as the New York Post has reported, Chelsea Clinton is very much like her mother, brusque, abrasive, entitled, and extraordinarily greedy. In fact, Chelsea Clinton's treatment of Clinton Foundation staff and her outrageous demands always caused a quick turnover at the Clinton Foundation, and those who objected to the ratio of spending in which very little was used for actual charitable activity, while millions were used to provide a jet-set lifestyle for the Clintons, were very quickly removed by the young princess. When it comes to brusque, brutish behavior, well, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. Chelsea Clinton was paid $600,000 annually by NBC to do virtually nothing. NBC's parent company, General Electric, got an enormous defense contract approved by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton right after the payoff to her daughter Chelsea. Finding themselves under fire, the Clintons put their daughter to defend the discrepancies in the Clinton Foundation's tax filings and omissions that showed that Hillary violated her agreement with the Obama White House to carefully vet the foundation's activities to avoid conflicts of interest. The Clintons also used Chelsea to blunt criticism that their foundation took millions from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from Oman, and for the Arab Emirates, nations that brutally oppressed women, denying them education, legal rights, and even the ability to control their own destinies. Chelsea could offer no defense for the foundation's grabbing of this millions of dollars in tainted Islamic money. Now, while it may sound outrageous to some, there's more than sufficient reason to believe that Chelsea Clinton is actually the daughter of Hillary Clinton and former U.S. Attorney General Webster Hubbell. While some will reject this notion, I believe a review of the overwhelming circumstantial evidence and photographs of them will prove that it is not beyond the possibility that Webb Hubbell is actually Chelsea Clinton's real father. And while some may believe that questioning the parentage of Chelsea is crass, she's long been part of the Clinton propaganda machine and has enjoyed enormous financial benefits as a result. It was in June of 1992 when Bill's political future was threatened by the Jennifer Flowers scandal that the Clintons strategically placed a photo of Hillary and Bill happily posing with Chelsea Clinton on the cover of People magazine as a way to snooker voters into the myth of Clinton family values. Although she claims she doesn't care about money on a quote-unquote fundamental level, the aura of monetary indulgence pervades the lifestyle of the young Chelsea Clinton. In 2013, Chelsea Clinton doled out $10.3 million for a swanky apartment in the sought-after corners of Manhattan's Flatiron District. In 2010, Her wedding cost $3.3 million, reportedly paid for by the Clinton Foundation, and she walked down the aisle in a Vera Wang dress priced at $25,000. The National Review noted at the time that $3,000 was spent on alcohol for this extravagant affair, which was more than the average American spends on an entire wedding. But because Chelsea Clinton is a public figure responsible for her actions and her history, I think she is relevant to the overall Clinton story. In February 27th, 1980, Chelsea Clinton was born, and as she grew, curiously, her facial similarities to Webster Hubbell, the Attorney General of Arkansas, a temporary Supreme Court justice in Arkansas, and later Attorney General in the Clinton administration, became rather obvious. The genetic giveaway is the protruding lower lip that both Hubbell and Chelsea Clinton still possess. Even after going through extensive plastic surgery in her 20s, this feature is still quite noticeable. The large, rubbery Hubbell lips are especially noticeable in pictures of Chelsea as a teenager. In her 20s, Chelsea reportedly had gotten a nose job and may have also gotten a chin augmentation or implant to give her a stronger jawline, according to Dr. Jennifer Walden, a Manhattan plastic surgeon. Chelsea also wore braces on her teeth during her youth, and now she's sporting a less gummy smile and has obviously straightened her once naturally curly hair. Dr. Walden's estimation, Clinton also underwent substantial dental work and injections of Juvederm, a dental filler, to disguise her somewhat gummy smile. Another Manhattan plastic surgeon, Dr. David Schaefer, said that Chelsea has improved over the years and now has a nose that fits her face thanks to her adept plastic surgeon. Melrose Larry Green, author of the book Why the Clintons Belong in Prison, was one of the first to point out the strong resemblance between Webster Hubbell and Chelsea. Hillary has always been protective of Webster Hubbell. When Clinton was elected president, Clinton tried to make Bill promise to appoint Webb Hubbell to the U.S. Supreme Court if a vacancy opened. Hillary ordered the newly elected president to give Webb an interim appointment as Chief Justice of the Arkansas Supreme Court. He's your friend and you should do it, Hillary said, according to former Arkansas State Trooper L.D. Brown, who overheard the conversation. After Bill was sworn in, Hillary made sure that Webster Hubbell was placed in the number 3 spot in the Clinton Justice Department. Clinton himself clearly saw Chelsea as one of his greatest achievements. On summer evenings, I would sip a drink in my big living room and look out at children, including the Fosters. That would be Vince Foster, who, of course, famously killed himself in his old executive office building office and then was moved to the park, Port Marcy Park, where his body was later found. But continuing, he said, on summer evenings, I would sip a drink in my big living room, look out at the children, including the Fosters and the Clintons, when Chelsea got big enough, bouncing happily on a trampoline in the shade of the big oak trees, Hubbell wrote in his account of the Clintons, friends at high places. Such a scene made me feel successful. Yes, it is my contention that Chelsea Clinton, would-be candidate for Congress, is the daughter not of Bill and Hillary Clinton, but of Hillary Clinton and Webster Hubbell. I invite you to go online and look at the many, many pictures of them side by side, and you will see the distinct similarity. Only in the Stone Zone will you get the inside political skinny like this. Meanwhile, the Attorney General for the District of Columbia, Brian Schwab, is suing the Trump administration for deploying National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. to stop the crime wave that the District of Columbia government was doing nothing to stop. Attorney General Schwab said no American should have the U.S. military, particularly out-of-state military, who are not accountable to the residents and untrained in local law enforcement, policing its streets. It's D.C. today, but it could be any other city tomorrow. We filed this action to put an end to this illegal federal overreach. Clearly, A.G. Schwab doesn't understand that the District of Columbia is not a state, and that it is under the federal jurisdiction of the President of the United States. President Donald Trump had the full authority to federalize the Metropolitan Police and to mobilize the National Guard. Why is it that only the politicians are objecting to this? Because it's very clear, given the incredible drop in violent crime, that the actual residents of the District of Columbia seem quite pleased about this decision by the president. Of course, this so-called overreach came into the city and put an end to an incredible crime wave. Criminals are on guard, knowing that there will be consequences now for their actions. When law enforcement is not hamstrung due to this leftist idiocy, the streets are always much safer. The more the Democrats fight against President Trump's law and order crackdown, the more it will become clear to the public that the Democrat Party of today is actually pro-crime. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice has launched a criminal probe over the mortgage fraud allegedly perpetrated by Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Cook was fired by President Trump after allegations were made public by Federal Housing and Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte that Cook had violated federal law when she claimed 2 different houses in 2 different states as her principal legal residence. The allegation of mortgage fraud comes surrounding properties owned by Cook in both Atlanta, Georgia, and Ann Arbor, Michigan. Cook listed both properties, again, as her primary residence, even though she appears to be renting out both of the properties. An independent journalist even visited the property in Ann Arbor, Michigan, to confirm that the individuals living in the house were not the owners. Before this is over, I predict to you that there will also be allegations of federal tax fraud by Lisa Cook. I think that once this federal investigation gets into all of these documents, you're going to find additional crimes. Special Assistant U.S. Attorney Ed Martin, who is a pro-MAGA bulldog, will be conducting this investigation and presumably these prosecutions. The Trump Justice Department is pursuing similar mortgage fraud cases against Senator Adam Schiff and New York Attorney General Letitia James, showing that nobody is above the law because of their political connections now that President Donald Trump is in charge. You're listening to the Stone Zone here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We bring you the inside skinny on American politics 5 days a week. President Donald Trump is appealing the civil ruling from the E. Jean Carroll case, in which Trump was ordered to pay $5 million for calling her a liar after she accused him of rape. After another separate case is ordering President Trump to pay Carroll $83.3 million in damages because he vehemently denied that any sexual assault took place. Trump was found liable for sexually abusing Carroll, and after the woman alleged she had been attacked in 1996 in the dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, a Manhattan department store. Even though there was not a shred of evidence, no witnesses, and no physical evidence to back up these allegations, and Carroll comes off as an unhinged far-left loony who told Anderson Cooper on CNN that she found the whole notion of rape sexy, the biased jury ruled against Donald Trump anyway. This is clearly one more part of the tsunami of lawfare that Donald Trump faced as he staged the greatest single comeback in American history. Just as the charges that he had made financial misrepresentations were overturned by a federal court, I predict to you now that these judgments against him in the E. Jean Carroll case will also be overturned. You're listening to me, Roger Stone, right here in the Stone Zone. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial because we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. You are entering the Stone Zone yet again. I'm your host, Roger Stone, right here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. In the latest incomprehensible federal court ruling by liberal activist judges, the University of California has been found as conducting discriminatory hiring practices by refusing to hire illegal immigrant students for on-campus jobs. No, you can't make this stuff up. A 3-judge panel on California's Court of Appeals stated, "We conclude that the university's employment policy facially discriminates based on immigration status, and that, in light of applicable state law, a discriminatory policy cannot be justified by the university's proffered reason. We merely require that the university not rely on litigation risk alone as the justification for its facially discriminatory policy." So in other words, the University of California has to hire illegal immigrants and will get sued into oblivion by the Trump administration because diversity is considered a god to these delusional, far-left, liberal lunatics on the state bench. Although this ruling is likely to get overturned by a higher court, that's not enough. It's time for judges to get impeached and convicted for helping the invaders who are being sent to this country as part of a war being waged through demographic replacement against the Constitution of the United States. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have chastised the fake news over the criticism of a recent bombing of narco-terrorists off the coast of Venezuela. A reporter asked Vice President Vance during a press conference on Wednesday, "What legal authority were you guys working under?" The vice president responded immediately, "These people, literally terrorists who are bringing deadly drugs into our country." Next question. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told the media earlier in the day they were heading towards the United States to flood our country with poison. And under President Donald Trump, those days are over. Interdiction does not work because these drug cartels know they're going to lose 2% of their cargo. They bake it into their economics. Rubio further asserted what will stop them is when we blow them up. It is abundantly clear the Trump administration is going to use the military to send a strong message to rogue regimes in Venezuela that their collusion with Cuba and China and Honduras to send illicit drugs into the United States through our southern border is coming to an abrupt end. Meanwhile, RFK today was attacked by Democrat senators for cleaning house at the CDC. If you have an opportunity tonight, you got to watch this on TV. It was covered by virtually all of the cable news networks. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. impresses me because I have never seen him back down, and I have never seen him make an assertion that he cannot support with scientific evidence or a credible study. He reminds me very much of his late father, Attorney General and New York U.S. Senator Robert F. Kennedy Sr., who was scrappy, and a brutal competitor. He was a little SOB, according to Richard Nixon, but he was the man who successfully managed his brother JFK's campaign for the presidency. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro is a marked man with a $50 million bounty placed on his head by the Trump White House as the administration ramps up their efforts to stop the radical socialists responsible for trafficking drugs up and across the United States southern border to fund his fledgling regime that has impoverished a nation that was once the richest in all of South America. Attorney General Pam Bondi drew attention to the Latin American countries that are enabling the Venezuelan regime of terror during a recent appearance on Fox Noticias, the Spanish-language version of Fox News. There is an air bridge where the Venezuelan regime pays to have their free airspace access undetected to Honduras, then Guatemala, and then on to Mexico, where they can traffic these drugs, transport these drugs. They're exchanging money for bribes. They're exchanging weapons for the ports of entry and airspace to get these drugs to all these other countries and then in to the United States, Attorney General Bondi said. I have reported extensively on the situation in Honduras. This was engineered by the Biden administration that through pro-Trump, pro-U.S. former President Juan Orlando Hernandez behind bars to enable the rise of a leftist narco state governed by a Maduro puppet, Xiomara Castro, that has since spiraled completely out of control. A similar situation is actually developed in Guatemala as well, where a divided government has put Attorney General Maria Consuelo Porras in a predicament as she attempts to end the narco trade while battling a president and an administration that seems diametrically opposed to her goals. The appropriate communications have taken place between both the prosecutor's office and the Specialized Agency of the United States of America. You can be certain that we will act with the final full force of law against anyone, regardless of their rank or position, who uses Guatemalan territory for illegal and illicit purposes, said the Guatemalan Attorney General Porras in a recent public address. The lack of action by the entities responsible for crime prevention and national security facilitates and enables the development of these illegal activities by these criminal organizations. The absence of action is also reflected in the incredible wave of violence that we see every single day in Guatemala and Honduras. Instead of joining the efforts we lead to guarantee respect for and compliance with the law, some people choose to distort and misrepresent the statements of the United States Attorney General with objectives unrelated to strengthening the rule of law. We reaffirm our willingness to provide all cooperation that contributes to the transnational fight against drug trafficking, as we always have in the past, said the Guatemalan Attorney General. Now the Attorney General finds herself at odds with President Bernardo Arevalo, a figurehead who, like Xiomara Castro in Honduras, was installed with considerable foreign assistance from none other than the Biden administration. Arevalo won election in 2023 amidst widespread claims of voter fraud. The Biden administration has been sending foreign agents, admitted after the fact in a Washington Post article, to enable this rise, also threatening economic sanctions if the public did not choose their hand-picked puppet candidate. The countries of the European Union jumped all over us. The big bosses of the North United States jumped all over us, said former Guatemalan President Alejandro Giammattei, who, quote-unquote, lost to Biden's hand-picked candidate in 2023. The Biden administration made quite a dramatic turn and saw that they had a real opportunity, a golden opportunity. They pulled out as many of the big guns as they could, said Eric Olson, who works for the Seattle-based International Foundation as a political analyst specializing in Central America. To secure Arevalo's victory, the Biden administration and allied NGOs engineered a nationwide protest with Guatemala's beleaguered indigenous population, who engaged in an Antifa-style tactics of blocking roads and obstructing commerce and destroying the business climate. This is exactly what happened in Cuba in the 1950s. Around the same time, the Biden Treasury Department placed arbitrary sanctions over alleged public corruption against influential former government figures, including Miguel Martinez, who was closely associated with then-President Giammattei. A week later, the Biden State Department announced the cancellation of visas for 300 prominent Guatemalans, including two-thirds of the elected members of Congress and business leaders who were aligned with then the pro-U.S. President Giammattei. This intervention from the Biden administration was eventually successful, and Arevalo was installed as the new president on the mandate to initiate a crackdown on corruption, which, of course, never really came. Your election has brought a sense of optimism to the people of America and those around the world, said former Vice President Kamala Harris after he was installed. And despite the challenges that have been posed to Guatemala's democratic process, the United States was proud to stand with you, Mr. President, following a free and fair election. You can't make this stuff up, folks. The election was neither fair nor free. It was the Biden administration installing a Marxist narco puppet into the chief executive's office in Guatemala. Following his ascent into power, Vice President Harris then announced a $170 million uptick in foreign aid, including $135 million from the now defunct USAID bureaucracy that would be sent to Guatemala to facilitate various woke directives in the country. In the since-deleted post by the U.S. Embassy to Guatemala, they announced the spending was part of a plan to, quote, protect human rights and to, quote, promote social inclusion among women, youth, and indigenous peoples. Now, according to the Washington Post, the Biden regime intervened in Guatemala to prevent a similar situation that had recently occurred in El Salvador. El Salvador, under the allegedly anti-democratic regime of visionary Nayib Bukele, who's actually a personal friend of mine, has restored the rule of law, has eliminated gang activity, and has ushered in an era of peace and prosperity that was previously thought unthinkable in that war-torn land. Towards those ends, the Biden administration was certainly successful in preventing Guatemala becoming much like the far more successful El Salvador. According to his cohort in Honduras, Arvala has paid lip service to cooperating with drug interdiction and slowing the spread of migration, but he's ultimately too weak and controlled to make any real substantial changes. The Guatemalan public now understands that they were duped by his branding as an anti-corruption fighter prior to his rise in power, and they're turning on him very quickly. In fact, newly released opinion polls show the president of Guatemala with a dismal favorability rating of 23%. Those numbers aren't likely to rebound anytime soon before the country's upcoming national election in 2027. Guatemala may be ripe for a Bukele or even a Javier Milei-style national renaissance, throwing off the shackles of narco-socialism while embracing prosperity and law and order. The Trump administration certainly has a prevailing interest in making sure the people of Guatemala are liberated from this narco-socialist illegitimate rule. Meanwhile, undeterred by threats levied by government officials, ICE agents are being sent to Chicago to conduct massive deportation operations against illegal immigrants in the Windy City. Fox News reported today that the federal officials have arrived at the Great Lakes Naval Base just north of Chicago, and they will be joined by 300 ICE agents in Chicago in the very near future. They are going to be setting up a primary processing facility in an unnamed building in Chicago, and this operation is expected to last for more than 45 days. Law enforcement has been warned about imminent protests that could turn violent as this operation is completed. Recently, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, a man who, if his IQ was 1 point lower, you'd have to water him like a plant, has called for people to rise up and defend the land in what was a not so thinly veiled threat of insurrection. Still, President Trump, who I plan to see tomorrow, remains firm in his resolve. He will not allow Democrats to prevent him from enacting his crackdown against violent crime and illegal immigration nationwide. I'm telling them if they want a showdown, that is exactly what they will get. President Donald Trump is a man who I've known for 50 years. He means what he says, and he says what he means. Only yesterday, when asked about Chicago, he said, "We are definitely going in. It's not a question of if, only a question of when." There's little question in my mind that President Donald Trump, while he cannot federalize the Chicago Police Department, can mobilize the National Guard. And based on the fact that Chicago has become the murder capital of the country, I think he is poised to do so. Meanwhile, President Trump is accurately touting his Social Security reform. Democrats would have you believe that the big, beautiful bill passed not so long ago by the Congress would have endangered Social Security, but in truth, 88% of those currently receiving Social Security benefits will now pay no tax. You wouldn't know that if you saw any of the propaganda from CNN or MSNBC, but I don't get my news from those news outlets for the same reason I don't drink out of the toilet. President Trump released a document Wednesday touting the many ways that Social Security has improved since he took office this past January. The administration has opened Social Security online portals for full access 24 hours a day. It was previously scheduled to be offline for 29 hours per week, and this bureaucratic inefficiency has been completely and totally remedied. Additionally, call and field offices for the Social Security Administration have been remarkably more efficient, with call wait times dropping by 73%, while serving double the amount of U.S. taxpayers. Field office wait times have been reduced overall by 30%. 275,000 illegal aliens have now been removed from the Social Security system. 12.4 million people listed as 120 years old and older had been added to a death master file, reducing the ability for malignant actors to steal these identities for the purposes of fraud. These common sense reforms have improved the system immeasurably, almost instantly, in a massive way. President Trump continues to deliver on every front in pursuance of his Make America Great agenda, and Social Security is no exception. Just days ago, liberals were outraged when the FBI raided the home and office of former National Security Advisor John Bolton. It's funny, none of these same liberal talking heads seemed to give much of a fig when the FBI raided my home at 6 o'clock in the morning to arrest me for the first time non-violent crime of lying under oath to the U.S. Congress in my voluntary testimony before the House Intelligence Committee regarding Russian collusion that we now know definitively never actually happened. Let me just ask the rhetorical question. How does one lie about something that never really took place? We now know, however, why the FBI raided the home and office of John Bolton. That is because Bolton both had and sent highly sensitive classified materials to others through a private unsecured email server while he was working at the White House during the first Trump administration. Investigators reopened a dormant investigation into Bolton's alleged use of a private email server to send classified national security documents to his wife and daughter from his work desk before his dismissal by President Donald Trump in September of 2019, according to a senior U.S. official, as reported in the New York Post. The investigation into John Bolton began in 2020 when he used classified information to write his book, The Room Where It Happens. You see, John Bolton, unlike Donald Trump, was not entitled by law to hold on to classified information, but he did exactly that. And therefore, there was a probable cause and a legal rationale for the raid on his home. The one person in the country who was allowed to have classified information, according to Judge Amy Berman Jackson, the judge in my case, was a president of the United States, in this case, President Donald Trump. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial because, well, we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. Well, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. came out swinging during a critical Senate hearing Thursday as the deep state and its Democrat allies attempted to force him out of his job just as he's helping make America healthy again. One Democrat senator in particular came out on the short end of the stick when he tried to challenge RFK, who responded with some things, well, the senator probably did not want to hear. According to NBC, it kind of went down like this. This happened 1 week after Kennedy pushed the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director Suzanne Monarez, who is not a medical director, to resign. The White House fired her when she refused to go, and 3 top CDC officials then resigned in protest of her firing. Imagine being appointed to a position in the executive branch, but then refusing to leave when you're canned. These people have a sense of entitlement that really boggles the mind. The hearing got testy in a hurry as the far-left Big Pharma hack, Senator Ron Wyden. Why do they all have those weird pop eyes, by the way? AOC has them. Adam Schiff has them. Ron Wyden has them. Not sure what that's all about. But he tried to question RFK's integrity by bringing up the words of the disgraced Monterez. Monterez aligned without any evidence in a Wall Street Journal op-ed published the day before that Kennedy had told her to, quote, go along with vaccination recommendations even if they don't match the science. Evidently, Wyden, the senator from Oregon, thought he could humiliate Kennedy when he brought this allegation up. Maybe he was hoping that RFK would crumble, so he doesn't understand Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because, well, it backfired spectacularly. Monterez said that you told her to go along with vaccination recommendations even if she didn't think such recommendations aligned with scientific evidence, Senator Wyden said. This is a yes or no question. You have an opportunity to call her a liar, but I'd like to see you respond to this, he continued. No, Kennedy said, I did not say that to her. In fact, I have never had a private meeting or conversation with her. We have witnesses who will testify that I never said that to her. So she's lying today to the American people and to the Wall Street Journal? Senator Wyden asked. Yes, sir, Kennedy responded definitively. Now, undeterred, Wyden got into another back and forth with Robert Kennedy over the Oregon senator, arguing once again that the HHS changes will damage the agency for, quote, decades to come. He then flipped out when Kennedy questioned him. I don't get letters from thousands of people who are not political saying that this set of changes is going to damage the health care of decades to come, Wyden angrily said. I don't get any. Kennedy fired back by pointing out that something that Wyden did not want to hear. The senator was listening to people who were telling him what he wanted to hear. Maybe you're listening to a selective group of people, Kennedy said. Maybe, Wyden said, trying to reply, but Kennedy then quickly shut him down. I'll tell you what, Senator, I'll pull my mailbag against your mailbag any day of the week, Kennedy roared. Anyone who thinks RFK will back down does not understand him. This final exchange was the most brutal of all, however, after Senator Wyden slammed Kennedy for supposedly implementing a cruel agenda. The HHA secretary completely nuked him by pointing out another inconvenient truth. Implementing an agenda that you think is fundamentally cruel and defies common sense, Wyden snapped. Do I get to reply? Kennedy said. Senator, you sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years? While the chronic disease of our children went up 76%? And you said nothing. You never asked the question, why is this happening? Today, for the first time in 20 years, infant mortality has increased in our country. It's not because I came here, it's because of what happened during the Biden administration. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. God bless you and Godspeed.